can.
Right. All right, Your Honor, I hear you.
Okay, thanks.
What chair is this?
You gotta enable your video.
Yeah, I'm trying. There we go. Okay. We're good? You hear me?
Yep.
All right, thank you. Okay. Good evening, sorry for the delay. Okay, so we're gonna do the same format as the Motzei Shabbos Shir, for those that are not familiar with it. So everybody's cameras are off and muted so that we can try and cover as much ground as we can. So questions should be posted in the chat section of the chat section of the Zoom. It's in the when you hit more, and you can do chat, and you can post your questions, and then the questions will be forwarded. Try and please stick to questions that are pertinent to what we're discussing. We'll try and get through in the next hour. Bez Hashem, we'll try and get through as much of cleaning and what chametz gomer is, and maybe some kashering depending on the time. But that's the goal. That's the goal, to get through all that tonight. Okay, so as a hakdama, also first I also want to thank my brother Peretz for arranging all this with the Zoom, and Elio Ikovic from Phoenix, who helps arrange all this. And we should be a schus, a refuah shalema for a friend of many of ours, Shmuel ben Devira, for refuah shalema b'sai shachal Yisrael. Okay, so as hakdama, Pesach is a stressful time. I think that is an understatement. So we're going to try. The goal is to try and explain and go through what's really halacha, what's minig, because it can make a big difference when you know what's the minig, what's the halacha, what you do have to stress out, what you don't have to stress over. But the truth is, you should really not stress over anything. I keep saying you, I mean me, myself too. Men, women, it shouldn't be stress, especially not on Yom Tov. I just saw today or heard today from somebody that the Gra said that the hardest mitzvah in the Torah is Simchas Yom Tov, because you have to be happy for all 7 days. You're not allowed to be sad or anything like that. So it's very hard to be totally besimcha for 7 days straight. Leading up to Yom Tov is not a mitzvah to be happy, but it's certainly a mitzvah to try and make things pleasant. Right? Mesilas Yesharim actually says that when the Gemara says that somebody should weigh the schar of the mitzvah versus what he's going to lose, meaning if you're going to go do a mitzvah, so you won't be able to relax, enjoy yourself, and weigh the loss of an aveira. So what he says, that one of the pshatim in that is that you have to weigh, when you're trying to do a mitzvah, are you going to lose things from doing the mitzvah that will take away from the mitzvah? Meaning, you're very well intentioned to clean for Pesach and make sure you don't have any chametz, etc. But if it's going to stress everybody out in the family, and it's going to cause shalom bayis issues, or it's going to cause kids to be very unhappy, etc. So then that's called yotza schara b'afseda. You're losing whatever your schara. You're going to lose whatever you're trying to gain. You're going to end up losing. And also, you could have a chumrah, the asili de kula. You can try to be strict for Hilchos Pesach, and then you're going to end up coming to be lenient in other areas, like something like that. So therefore, before the eitzah for us is before we get stressed out, we think, what does Hashem want from me in this situation? Right? I just cleaned the room, and then somebody went and brought in chametz. So if we think to ourselves, okay, what does Hashem want from me in this situation? So does he want me to get stressed out and cause everybody all sorts of tsar, or people make mistakes and he wants me to swallow it, no pun intended, and just take it and move on, right? So if we stop and we think about that for a few seconds, then it usually will help us get our priorities in order. Okay, so that being said, one more example of maybe Yatzas Charav say this this year. I don't plan on discussing that tonight, but Basician next week or the week after. So this year, Pesach is very unique that it's on a Shabbos. Erev Pesach is on a Shabbos, right? So everybody, the major stress is going to be how do we eat challah, because you can't eat matzah. So how are you going to eat challah? So what many are going to do is they're going to sit outside, or they're going to eat. They're going to sit outside and eat the bread, and they're going to come inside. All sorts of shilas, and it's going to make Shabbos very unpleasant. So we have to think to ourselves: is it really worth all the chumras and all the stress to ruin a Shabbos? Shabbos is a big mitzvah to have a pleasant Shabbos. So we have to also weigh what chumrah that we're going to try and do is going to come to a kula. For example, the Shulchan Aruch says that on Erev Pesach in the morning when it's Shabbos, you eat chametz on your table, and then you knock off the table from the crumbs onto the floor, and then you move on. That's what he says. I would like to challenge anybody to do that nowadays, but that's what the Shulchan Aruch says you do. You just wipe the table off, the crumbs from the chametz onto the floor, and you move on. Obviously, their floors were made out of dirt, so their floors, the chametz got instantly ruined when it went onto the dirt, and our floors won't get instantly ruined. But certainly what we can learn out from that is we can have a regular, proper Shabbos meal, depending on the timing, obviously, and then just sweep up around the table, and that's it. And either flush the crumbs down the toilet or put it outside, whatever it is, and you could have a regular, normal Shabbos. Okay, but the point is that we should just weigh everything that we're doing to know exactly what Hashem wants of us at that particular time. Okay, just as Hakdama, I just want to mention a few interesting halachas that many people are not aware of with Hilchos Pesach, and it just shows you how if you don't know the halacha, you can get carried away in the chumras, and sometimes carried away in the kulas. For example, if somebody's baking let's say somebody next Shabbos is baking a cake for Pesach, before Shabbos, obviously baking a Pesach cake, and somebody comes into the kitchen, thinks that cake is a chametz cake, and they want to use your oven, and they come in and they take a chametz cake and they put it into your oven right next to your Pesach cake, and the cakes are touching. So now your Pesach cake that you worked so hard to bake is being touched and being baked right next to a chametz cake, and they're even touching. What is the halacha of your Pesach cake? The answer in the Shulchan Aruch is very clear. That Pesach cake is perfectly fine. All you have to do is take off a little sliver of where the chametz cake touched the Pesach cake, and you get rid of that, and then you eat that cake on Pesach. It might even be pal tashchis to throw it out. I can't imagine anybody possibly doing that, myself included, but that is the halacha. And the reason for that is we don't really have to get into that now. But the reason for that is because the taste is not going to go from one piece of cake to the other. There's no way to taste to travel. So the area where they touch, so we're afraid there's a few crumbs here and there. But other than that, it's not a problem. Okay, so I can't imagine anybody doing that. But the point is that that's the halacha. That is the halacha. On the other hand, so people hear about, women cleaning the walls, scrubbing the walls. I think, why are you scrubbing the walls? It could be chametz on the walls. That it's brought in the Sharatzian, and the Mishnah Berurah brings that there is a minhag based on Yerushalmi to scrub the walls. What it's based on, I'm not sure, but that is that's also halachas. That's halacha l'chumra. Okay, and then you have another interesting halacha, which is based on the minhag that people buy all their milk and all their eggs before Pesach. That's because there's a halacha that if a cow will eat chametz exclusively, then the milk that cow milks is considered chametz. Not everybody agrees to it, but there's many that say that that's chametz, which to our minds, that's a little difficult to comprehend, that if a cow eats chametz, then the milk is going to be chametz. The same thing with eggs. If if all their fed is chametz, then it's going to be a problem. So that's why if you buy everything before Pesach, that's going to be batal, which we'll get back to why buying it before Pesach helps, right? Also another important halacha, right? So that's why people have the minhag to buy it before. But the bottom line is nowadays, from what I understand, most animals do not eat exclusive chametz if they eat chametz at all. So they eat a combination. Once they eat a combination of chametz and anything else like water or grass or whatever it is, then this halacha doesn't apply, but that became the minhag. Right? Okay, so we see from this that it's that there are complicated halachas and very difficult for us to grasp which is halacha, what's not halacha, what's minhag. And of course with Pesach we do have where something halachically really doesn't make sense to us halachically, but we do it because of what we call chumrah de Pesach, which is minhagim that come from over the years, and minhagim that are just adopted just for us to be careful because of Pesach. Now, why is it that Pesach we're so machmer for over any other isurim, right? It shouldn't be much more usur than cooking chicken or meat and milk in the same kitchen, right? All of us cook meat and milk in the same kitchen. So why can't we cook chametz and not chametz in the same kitchen? So the answer to that is, well, the first thing is that chametz, if you eat a kezayis worth, it's a chiyuv kares, which is the most strict. That's the most strict of punishments possible. Not that we like to focus on punishments, but it's one of the more strict halachas. Regular kashrus is not nobody is chayiv. You're not chayiv kares for that. And the other one is that we're used to keeping meat and milk separate all year round. But on Pesach, we're not used to being separated from our chametz. So since we're not used to being separated from our chametz, we have to be much more strict. Also, two other halachas, the number one things that come up in kashrus shilas that we rely on to be lenient in any time there's meat and milk shilas, we don't have that kula when it comes to Pesach. The first one is if something is not a ben yomah. So we know that if you take a spoon that has not been used in 24 hours, a spoon that's dairy that hasn't been used in 24 hours, and you put it into meat. So we know that meat is going to be fine because that spoon hasn't been used in 24 hours, and anything that's older than 24 hours gives off a negative taste, and therefore it's going to be kosher. On Pesach, we don't go with that leniency. So theoretically, you could take a chametz spoon that hasn't been used in a year, and you mix it with your Pesach food, on Pesach, it's going to be a problem. So since that's the first major leniency that we keep with Hilchos Kashrus, we don't have that on Pesach. So therefore, we have to be very careful. Svardim do not hold that halacha, meaning on Pesach, they will be lenient, just like the rest of the year, if it hasn't been used for chametz in the last 24 hours. That's one. The other one is what we call bittul Basician, which is that anytime you have something treif that gets put into a food, let's say, or you drop some cheese, let's say, into a cholent, as long as there's 60 times more cholent than cheese, then we're going to say the cholent's fine. But on Pesach, it doesn't work. On Pesach, if you drop any drop of chametz into your food, then it's never going to be batal. Which is why there are many, usually more in the Hasidic world, that have a minhag to not use tap water on Pesach. And the reason for that is because the tap water comes from the reservoirs upstate, and upstate there's chametz in the reservoirs because people are throwing beer in there and they're going fishing with bread, etc., and it's not batal, right? So all the water is connected all the way to the reservoirs. It sounds crazy, but if you say that chametz is not batal, is not nullified at all. So if you drop a piece of chametz into your food, then it can be thousands of times more food than the chametz. It's still no good. So then, and it's unlimited. According to the basic reading of the halacha, it's unlimited. So therefore, there's chametz in the reservoirs and all the water is connected. So, okay, how we get around that? Most places can say that that's not a problem. But most places can say it's not a problem. But you can, I just lost my train of thought here, I'm sorry. Most places can say it's not a problem, but some are makpid. So since they're makpid, then you can't. I'm on a share. Yeah. So I'm sorry. So, but some are makbid not to. But that's where that comes from. So there's no bittul b'shishim. However, okay. So now you're going to say that the chametz is batal before Pesach, because the halacha is that before Pesach it is batal. So, for example, and this comes up, I get the shaila many times before Pesach. Somebody's cooking a soup for Pesach, and then by mistake they mix the soup with a chametz spoon. The halacha is before Pesach, the regular kashrus halachas apply. So therefore, by mistake, you stuck some chametz into your soup before Pesach, and it's 60 times more soup than the chametz. You are allowed to, not only are you allowed to eat it on Pesach, you probably should eat it on Pesach. I can't imagine anybody's going to do that, but that is the halacha, and you would not have to tell anybody either, because before Pesach, it is batal b'shishim. There are many opinions. This also may come as a big surprise. There are many opinions that say you can even do it on purpose before Pesach and put in chametz into your food, and you will be batal and it'll be nullified, and you could have that food on Pesach. And there are many opinions that say you can even do it on purpose. Obviously, nobody's going to do that, but if it happens, then for sure it's going to be okay, right? So that's why people take the water, they fill up the water before Pesach, because before Pesach it is batal b'shishim, and then you're fine. Okay, the same thing. There are other chumras that are similar, are that normally we know kli sheni and kli shlishi we're more lenient with. If something happened in the kli sheni, meaning like you put in a meat fork or meat spoon into coffee or whatever it is, then it's a kli sheni, we're much more lenient. On Pesach, we are more machmer. We know that anything that's cold all year round is not a problem. On Pesach, there are those that are machmer. So therefore, that's why, because of all these chumras, that's why we have to be a lot more careful in Pesach. And again, the reason why we're more machmer on Pesach is because of the chiyuv karis, and that we're not separated from the whole year. Okay, so that being said, then let's start with the cleaning. Okay, so any parts of the house that are going to be sold don't have to be cleaned. This is something that's important to know. If there's a room that's too difficult for you to clean, let's say it's toys, and you're only going to be home for half of Pesach, and to go through all the toys, which we'll get to the toys in a few minutes, but it's too difficult to do that. So what you do is you can just close up the toys, and you'll sell that closet to the guy. But you have to mark it off with tape so that nobody goes in there, and so that if the guy comes to the house, the guy knows where to get it. But we'll discuss that later. Right, so that's the first thing. So you have that. If something's too difficult to clean, you have that leeway to do that. Right, then. But so where do you have to clean for chametz? So basically, anywhere in the house that you could have brought chametz into throughout the year has to be checked. So if it's a house of adults, and you know that nobody ever brought chametz, let's say, to the bedrooms or into the bathroom, then you don't need to check that. I don't know how somebody would know for sure or definitively if they never brought chametz, but if you know that you didn't bring chametz in there, then you don't have to do b'dikas chametz. However, if there's kids in the house, then we consider that the whole house is a place that chametz is brought into, and therefore you have to check everything. Okay? Now, there is a disagreement whether we're checking for crumbs. Most poskim, well, not most, everybody holds that when you're looking for chametz, you're looking for a olive's worth, a kizayis worth of chametz, meaning a piece of kizayis. Whether it combines or not, it could be all the chametz in the house combines, but crumbs is the issue. Many poskim hold that you're not searching for crumbs, you're searching for substantial pieces of chametz. And that's the way we pass. And even though there are those that say that you do have to search for crumbs, we go with that you don't have to search for crumbs. Okay, so that means when you're in the bedrooms and you're opening the drawers and you're checking for chametz, you don't have to make yourself crazy. It may not even have to be wiped out. I think most people do that just for convenience sake. You take out the clothing from the drawer, you wipe it down, you put it back in, and you move on, right? That's because you have to, we're being machmer to check for the crumbs, but that's a chumrah. So really, you just open the drawer, you look, you see if there's any substantial chametz, which in all probability there isn't, and then you move on. So again, crumbs is a disagreement whether you have to search for crumbs. We paskin me'ikar adin that you don't have to search for crumbs, but many are strict and they do search for crumbs. However, not on the floor. The floor crumbs are not an issue on the floor. Many people go on the floor and they scrape in between the cracks of the flooring, of the wood flooring, and in the corners and all that. It's totally unnecessary. If you have a minute to do it like that, that's fine. But la halacha, absolutely not required at all, especially if you have wood floors and you use a wood cleaner or a mop or anything like that. That's going, even if there are crumbs there, it's gonna make the crumbs taste bad. So therefore, you don't have to be too concerned with the floor, which is what we said before, that after you eat the meal, according to Shulchan Aruch, after you eat the meal on Pesach, Erev Pesach morning, so all you have to do is throw them onto the floor, and then you're fine, right? So again, crumbs, me'ikar adin, don't have to be searched for. On the floor, they certainly don't have to be searched for. Obviously, you're going to sweep your floor and you're going to mop your floor, and that is certainly sufficient. Okay, so now outside. What about outside? So outside also could be, if you have a kazayas of chametz outside on your porch or on your yard, that could be a problem. I imagine most people don't, because over the winter nobody's really eating outside, so that's not much of a concern. But you should just look to see if you're going to have if you have any chametz there. Okay, now what about at a part of the house that you can't get to? Right, so behind the refrigerators, behind the ovens, stoves, heavy furniture, you don't have to move the furniture. Heavy couches, you don't have to move because there's no chashash. And the truth is, even if you see chametz behind there, you still don't have to move it, because we learn out from the halacha that if you have a pile of stones on top of chametz, if a dog can't get to it, so then it's not a problem. So all you have it in mind when you're being mevatel your chametz, or have it in mind when you're selling your chametz, that it's not yours and it's nothing, and then you're fine. But if you can reach it, then you have to try and reach it. You have to try and reach it with your hand. Another option is, if you can't reach it, what you would do is spray it up with a cleaner that's going to make it not roy to be eaten by a dog. And if it can't be eaten by a dog, then it's not a problem. It's not considered chametz, and therefore you're okay. Okay, so again, behind heavy items, you don't have to search. If you see something, then you should try and get to it. If you can't get to it, it's not a problem, as long as you know that you never move the items. But like beds, if you see something under a bed, then you do have to go under the bed, because it depends on the bed. That's the truth. If the beds move, because people move their bed when they're looking for things, they drop their glasses or they're looking for their slippers, etc., and you end up moving the bed. So the beds do get moved easily. So therefore, behind beds, on the sides of beds, you do need to check for the chametz, and you would need to move them. But anything heavy, you don't need to move. If you see something and you can't get to it, right, like somebody just posted, like under the radiator, etc., the heating ducts, the air conditioning ducts, and you just spray it up and you're okay. Carpeting should be vacuumed, and then that's all. You don't have to do much more to that. And furniture, so inside couches. See, that's an interesting thing, because inside a couch, really, it's covered, so you don't really. So what you do is you should one second, I'm sorry. With couches, to reach inside the couch, really you don't have to check, because why would anybody reach under the couch? However, especially if there's kids around, people do end up sticking their hand, they lose something, right? Some stuff falls out of their pocket, they look in the couch, and then you put your hand in there, and then you end up with Cheerios or whatever types of chametz, right? So therefore, couches, the minig is that you do stick your hands inside the couch and empty it out. That I think that's usually a pretty hard. Cars is a check for chametz, and you need to do bedikas chametz just like on your house, unless you plan on not driving it, and then you can sell it to the guy, and then that will get you out of that. But otherwise, you have to clean your car, and in the areas on the bottom of the car where you can't reach, so really it's okay because you can't get to it. But again, spray it up with some sort of cleaner, and then you're okay. Now, clothing. Okay, so what's with clothing for Pesach? So really, if you have a lot of clothing in your closet, you have to check all that clothing. You have to check all that clothing for chametz. Now, the clothing that you're not going to wear, then you could clothing that you're not going to wear, you can have them on sell to the guy. You don't have to do anything with that, right? All right, so that's am I breaking up still? I'm good. Okay. Sometimes the internet gets a little lousy here. I apologize if that happens. Anyway, so clothing, you really do have to search. You really have to search the pockets for clothing, and you have to search the cuffs. Cuffs are a common area to have chametz in it. But if you send the clothing to the dry cleaner, then it's really chemicals that clothing that will make it not edible. So you really don't have to check. So then you just do a functional check in case somehow there was a piece of chametz left. You know, you hid some chametz in your pockets from a kiddush or something like that. Maybe they missed it. Then you just check for that. But it's not. But after it's dry cleaned, it's not a problem. And even if it's washed in the laundry with detergent, also not a problem. If you didn't wash it, or you just washed it with cold water without detergent, then really the pockets should be checked, and they should be checked outside, and that's usually enough. How about books? Books. So really, it's a big disagreement whether you have to check for books. The Chazon Ish held that you have to check every book if you want to use a book. Well, he was using Sfarim. But if you want to check Sfarim, if you want to use Sfarim or books over Pesach, you have to check them. You got to go through each one to see. I don't know if you do page by page, but you certainly have to, turn it over and move it all around, shake it to see if there's any chametz in there. Again, we're really not looking for crumbs. We really possibly not looking for crumbs. So there's not usually anything more than crumbs in a book. But most places hold you don't have to check them, and you can just use them. But if you plan on bringing the svarim or the books to a table, a lot of people like to eat and they read a book while they're at the table, then you most definitely have to search those books and svarim. And the reason for that is because crumbs, we said crumbs are not batel. So if you're reading from a sefer or a book at the table, and then that crumb manages to make its way into the food, then you have a problem, right? Because it's not batel. So that's why if you're going to bring the books to the table, then you should check them. You have to check them well. Just shaking them out is not allowed. Not allowed. I mean, it's allowed, but it's not. You shouldn't be doing that. Bringing it to the table. If you don't want to bring it to the table, then you don't really have to check. Benchers that you use all year round, that usually has chametz on them. Obviously, if you check them well and you see there's absolutely nothing on it, then you can use them. I think as most of Klal Yisrael takes those benchers and puts them away and uses special ones for Pesach. Children's toys, okay, that's usually a major one. So children's toys, really, they could just be eyeballed, but you'd have to eyeball the toys and see if there's no chametz, and you're okay. Problem is that a lot of times kids eat around their toys. And again, if you have a little drop of chametz or a little crumb of chametz on the toy, like on a Lego piece, and wedged in there's a little bit of chametz, and then ends up in the kid's food, so that's not a good thing. Even though, let's just reiterate, a crumb, you're not chayiv unless you eat a kizayis worth, an ala's worth of chametz, which is not happening, right? So one does not have to worry under normal circumstances that they're going to be chayiv kares, right? That's not the issue here. The issue here is that we still are strict in something called chati shir is also from the Torah. So even though a measurement is a kizayis, but a chati shir, half a measurement, is also a problem from the Torah, and half doesn't mean specifically half, it means any amount. So any amount of chametz you're not allowed to have is also from the Torah, but you don't have to be worried about kares and all those scary things that people talk about. But again, you should, we still don't want, and crumbs is really even less, like we discussed, because many persons hold that crumbs is not even an issue, right? Okay, so that's that. So toys, so what most people have a minute to do is whatever toys they're going to use, you should wash them, put them in. There's some put them into washing machines, some put them into dishwashers. It could be put into a chametz dishwasher as long as you know that it's clean. I don't think that would be a problem. But or you just put them into the bathtub and you wash them. But again, it's not you're not mechuyev to do that. People are just doing that because it's a safer bet. But really, as long as you eyeball them, then it's fine. I don't know which way is easier, right? Yeah. So that's the toys. Brooms can have chametz on them, right? So brooms, many have a minute to get new brooms, but you don't have to get a new broom. But you got to make sure that there's no chametz on it. It would really defeat the purpose if your broom has chametz on them. And since there can be many crumbs of chametz on brooms, so it's usually just easier to buy a new broom. Same thing with the vacuum cleaner, right? Don't forget to throw out the vacuum cleaner bag before Pesach, because you can have an accumulation. That one might actually end up with a kizayis of chametz, right? Because you're accumulating the chametz from all the rooms, right? Crumbs, and they'll all combine together. Although I still don't think you'll get to a kizayis, but it is theoretically possible. So make sure you throw out the vacuum cleaner bag before Pesach. So that's that. Any questions? I don't see too many questions popping up on this. So either I'm being very unclear or I'm being too clear. So I would venture to say I'm being unclear, but okay. So nobody has any questions. I don't know if maybe people don't know how to post the questions. If you want to post anonymously, then you can just log off, and then when you log on, you can erase your name and just log on that way. Okay, whatever, no questions, then we will move on. What is chametz gomer? These are very common questions, and a lot of people are way more strict than they have to be about which chametz they get rid of. Now, what are we talking about chametz gomer for? Because many people have the minhag, many people have the custom that they don't sell chametz gomer to the guy, right? Because we're using a lot of loopholes to sell chametz to the guy, and we'll discuss that maybe next week. Basician, we use a lot of loopholes, but so many people choose not to sell chametz gomer to the guy. We paskin that selling chametz, real chametz to the guy, is 100% mutter according to halacha. Of course, there are opinions that say that it's better not to, but bottom line is we paskin that you are allowed to. Okay, but many people are strict and they don't want to sell chametz gomer. So then what they end up doing is they end up throwing out everything, right? They end up throwing out everything that's in their house. There are very few items, when you sit down and analyze it, there are very few items that are really chametz gomer. Like breads, obviously, pastas, crackers, cookies, and some cereals like Cheerios. Those are the obvious ones. And that's basically it, right? Everything else, even if there is chametz gomer in it, this is important to understand. Everything else, even if there's chametz gomer in it, right, real chametz, then I'm going to go through a list now of what is and what's not. Even if there's real chametz in it, if it's not a kizayis worth and it's mostly non-chametz, then that does not get the status of chametz gomer, and you're allowed to sell it, right? We're talking about chametz gomer means it's got to be fully chametz. Once it's in a mixture, like we discussed, certainly if it's batal b'shishim, you could even use it on Pesach. right? Obviously, we're not going to do that without the OUP or the whatever. The OU is lav dafka, whatever. Kosher lepesach, kosher pesach hashkacha, but certainly you can keep it. And even if it's much more, if it's just a mixture, then 100% can be sold. Okay, oats. So oats is also oatmeal. Oats is also chametz gomer. Right. Let's go through more of the things that are not chametz gomer, and then if I'm missing anything, then I ask anybody to please post whatever it is. So yeast. Even though when anybody learns Mishnayos and Gemara Pesachim, they say yeast. It keeps talking about sa'ar is yeast, etc., etc. Yeast nowadays is not chametz, so there's no reason to throw out all your yeast. You could just put it away, and you could sell it to the guy. I don't even know if you have to sell it. Probably don't even have to sell it to the guy. Okay, but everybody's using the minhag is we use fresh food items for Pesach, but you put it away, and you could sell it to a guy. By the way, you could also put away one cabinet of a pantry, let's say, meaning you don't have to use an entire pantry. You can, and you don't have to close up an entire pantry. You can just take one or two shelves, cover it with plastic or whatever, and tape it up so that you know nobody's going to go in there, and you can sell that to the guy for Pesach, right? So you don't have to find necessarily. It would be better to put it in a corner someplace where nobody's going to see it. But if you can't, you don't have the room, so you can just put it all in. You could put it all in the cabinet and cover it over well, and that would be okay. I see there was a toys question that was just posted. Yeah, if you quickly wipe them down with a wipe, that's as good as washing. Yes, that's 100% it's the same as washing. Would it be better than eyeballing them? Yeah, because sometimes you can't necessarily see a crumb. But again, these are chumras. These are chumras. So therefore, it's again, just let's understand when it's a chumrah and when it's halacha. So I don't know if there's any minhag in Klal Yisrael for toys, because I think toys is a relatively new invention. So I don't know if we could say that from Europe there was a minhag with, I'm sure they had toys in Europe, but not to the extent that we have nowadays. So I can't say there's any specific minhag that you have to wash them. So, but eyeballing them, it would not be as good as washing them. But again, you have to know, everybody has to know where they're holding, what the stress level is in the house, et cetera, and use your judgment, well, what to nitpick on and what not to, right? Just parenthetically, just popped in my head, I would like to say this because I think it's important for people to know, is that especially with Pesach, you hear all different opinions. Oh, this Rav said this, and this Rav said that, and this Rav said this opinion and that opinion. This is all because, yes, different Rabbanim will have different baselines for what they paskin. Meaning, one Rav may say, I don't believe you should sell this particular chametz gomer. I don't like, you have a bottle of whiskey, not worth it, sell it. Another Rav may say, no, bottle of whiskey is a bottle of whiskey. You should sell it. One Rav may say not sell it. One Rav may sell it. Those are all baselines, and the Rabbanim are getting asked the shilas in different ways. But in almost all situations, I would even say 99% of situations, and I believe this is very important for people to understand. In 99% of situations, all the Rabbanim are going to say the same thing. If you put all the Rabbanim at a table and people came in and asked their shilas, the Rabbanim in most scenarios would say the same thing, meaning one Rav may come in and say, yes, I don't know, let's use it as an example. You ask the Rav, do I have to wash every one of my toys? So one Rav may say, yeah, I prefer halacha, you should wash your toys. Another Rav may say, I think you shouldn't wash your toys. But then when you sit the two Rabbanim down together and the people asking the Shaila come in and say, I work from 9 to 5 and I don't have a babysitter to help out with the kids. And I'm having stress because one of the kids is not well, and there's corona and this and that. Both Rabbanim will look at you and say, okay, don't wash the toys, right? There's going to be no more disagreement. So, but what happens is that person A asks Rabbi A and gets the rabbi's basic psak, and then person B asks Rabbi B, or sometimes even Rabbi A, and gets a different psak. But that's because the scenario changed. Right, halacha Baruch Hashem. That's the beauty of halacha of Yiddishkeit, is that we're not like other religions where it's one way or the highway. We adjust halacha to be based on the scenarios and on the situations. So even though you may hear psakim from other people, from other Rabbanim, but usually in most situations, all Rabbanim will agree because it's what we call Shas HaTchak and B'di'evet and these type of things. So what we're saying here is like the basic halachas, but if you hear differently, then feel free to ask or find out that the situation, that the way it was presented could have been totally different. Right? Okay, so I'm sorry for that little side note. So yeast is not chametz. Vinegar is not chametz gomer and can be sold. Okay, so again, reiterating, you don't have to wash the toys, but you certainly have to check them. Some are strict to wash it because if there's crumbs, then you don't have to. If there are crumbs, then you'll get rid of them with washing. But again, that's a chumrah. Checking them though is for sure required. Okay. I'm sorry. Yeast is not chametz gomer. Vinegar, even if there's, first of all, most vinegar nowadays, from what I understand, is not made out of wheat, corn, etc. There's, from what I understand, there is tons of extra corn in the United States. They have no idea what to do with it, so they're making a lot of things out of corn nowadays, and that helps because corn is kidneyous, but kidneyous you do not have to sell. That's another important point to know. Anything that's kidneyous, not only don't you have to throw it out, you don't even have to sell it. You can keep it in your house, even in open. It doesn't even have to be covered. You may want to cover it practically because you don't want anybody taking it, but by mistake, right? Again, Sfardim eat kidneyous. Ashkenazim, it's a minig not to. So you don't have to even sell it. You can even leave it out. Again, not advisable to leave it out, but you can, right? So vinegar is mostly not, again, we're not talking about using this without a kosher for Pesach certification. That you definitely need kosher for Pesach certification. But we're talking about whether you have to get rid of it. So vinegars, you do not have to get rid of. Even if there's wheat in the vinegar, it's mostly water. So like we said, if it's mostly water, it's mostly another ingredient, then it's not a problem. You could set up flour, even if it's bleached flour, is not chametz gomer according to almost all opinions. There are a few that say you shouldn't sell it, but almost all opinions that I know of hold that flour is not chametz gomer and you could sell it. Now you're going to say, what do you mean flour gets bleached? There's water on it. It doesn't get water on it. It only gets the water on it when it's wheat, when it's still in the wheat. In the wheat, what am I saying? When it's still wheat, that's when it gets touched, and that's just the chumrah that water touching wheat would make it chametz gomer. So therefore, flour is not chametz gomer. Barley, almost all barley is not chametz gomer. Because barley we know can make chametz, but there's no water that touched it. Again, if water didn't touch it, then it's a non-issue. It's not chametz. So therefore, barley is not chametz gomer. You could sell your barley. Obviously, cholent beans, those type of beans are kidneyous, and you certainly don't even have to sell them. You can't use them, but you don't have to sell them. Buckwheat is not wheat. Believe it or not, there's quite a few of these type of things. You would think buckwheat is chametz. Buckwheat is not chametz. It's not wheat. It's kidneyous though, so you can't use it because it looks like wheat. Rice cakes are not chametz gomer, even if there's some whole wheat, whatever. Sometimes some of these rice cakes stick in whole wheat, stuff like that. That's not chametz gomer. Corn flakes is not chametz gomer. Most cereals are not chametz gomer. Cheerios obviously is, and anything that has flour is. But like these cereals that make you think that they're mezainis, like Cookie Crisp and these type of things, the bracha on those things not even mezainis. Right? They're made out of, most of the time they're made out of cornmeal, whatever it is. That's not chametz gomer. You can just put it away. Cosmetics and perfumes, you certainly don't have to get rid of them. Whether you can use the ones from all year round, that's a conversation for later. I don't think we'll get to it tonight, but certainly you could sell them. Play-Doh is a common question. Play-Doh is chametz in there. It's made out of flour. However, they throw so many chemicals in there. Whether you can use it over Pesach, that's debatable. Certainly, you don't have to get rid of it. You can certainly sell that to the guy. I think most say better not to use Play-Doh. on Pesach, but certainly you don't have to throw it out if you don't sell chametz gomer. Yes, okay, so going back to the toys, so a grandmother with a grandmother whose toys are not really used that often, so then just checking it, a perfunctory check, I would say is enough. Okay, so that's basically that. If I left out any foods, then please post what it is, what I'm missing. Okay, now there are a few things that may come as a surprise to people, because for some reason it seems like people overlook these things, and it almost sounds like we're being too strict. Here it is that we're trying to tell everybody to traditional soups are certainly chametz gomer, and rolled oats are chametz gomer. Quinoa is not. Quinoa, many say, is even quinoa, and many say you could even have on Pesach. Obviously, it has to be kosher to Pesach. Let me see what else we have here. Okay, bourbon. If bourbon is legally minimally 51% corn, I had no idea about that. Flax seeds is not chametz gomer. If bourbon is 51% corn, if not more than that, then I would say for sure you could sell it. If it's more than 50%, you can certainly sell it. Yeah, that's an interesting fact. Okay, kishka is chametz gomer unless it's kosher lepesach. And by the way, people, you have to be careful when you're shopping. You got to make sure that you check each item that it's kosher lepesach. Unfortunately, every year there are people. What happens is you have people stocking the shelves in the grocery stores, and you have kishka that's chametz and kishka that's not chametz, right? And sometimes they get mixed up. It's human error. That's just the way it goes, and people don't realize. And vinegars and all these type of things. So you should check when you're shopping. You should check each thing to make sure it has the kosher Pesach symbol on there. Okay, so now a few things that people are not aware of. So garbage cans. So what's the story with this? If you clean out your garbage can, so it's no problem, right? But many people don't clean out their garbage cans, myself included. Now, what you do is you have in mind to sell. You can have in mind to sell the garbage cans to the guy, and then the garbage cans become the guy's, and then it's not a problem. That's the easy way out. The other way out is just to wash them down and to clean them out, right? It's also a problem this year if you take your chametz and put it into your garbage can. So now it's still that chametz is still in your reshus on Shabbos morning. Right, so if you sell the garbage can to the guy, then you're putting it into the guy's garbage can, and then it's not a problem. Right? Okay, but cleaning out the garbage cans, you don't have to. You don't have to if you sell it. Otherwise, you should, because there probably is chametz in there. Whether the chametz is edible by a dog, I see animals eating the garbage all the time. So it's assumed that it is edible. Okay, rings that women wear, right? And maybe watches, even for men. So here it is that we're scraping the floors and we're scraping the refrigerators and all that type of thing, and the shelves, etc. And then we have these rings that we wear, right? And they're around chametz every day, multiple times a day, and they have little nooks and crannies where there could be a little drop of chametz in there, and people just totally forget about the rings. I mean, does it make more sense to scrape the floorboards of your house and not take care of your rings, or should you better take care of your rings and don't worry about what's on the floor, right? So rings is an issue. So at the minimum, they should be cleaned and maybe even kashered. I know just listen to this whole. Don't leave now, because they could come out ruining all your jewelry, right? But like if you have a ring, right, and it touched hot chametz, which I could imagine if let's say if you have somebody who always cooks and bakes with gloves on, okay, so that's less of a concern. But from what I understand, most people don't. And now your ring touched some hot chametz like a challah. You took the challahs out of the oven, and your ring touched the challah, and the challah was boiling hot. So now that made your ring now into chametz, and then you go take a food out on Pesach, and a kosher Pesach thing, and it touches your ring. Now there's probably going to be 60 times more, but we said on Pesach it doesn't really work, right? So how do we get around that? So basically, what some do is they take their rings. I don't know if this works. It might ruin things. Some stick it into some sort of cleaner that tastes terrible, and then even if there's any chametz on there, then it's going to make it bad tasting, and then you have no problem. Some actually kasher their jewelry. I don't know. I think the women in my house do not kasher the jewelry. And if you're going to do it, you better speak to a jeweler first before you ruin the jewelry. But something certainly should be done with it. Yeah, you can. I see a couple of people texting here some questions. Why can't you just wipe it and wash it? You can. The problem, like we discussed, is that if you actually made it into real chametz because you touched hot challah with it, then wiping and washing it's not going to do anything for you, right? So that's why some people are strict to actually kasher it. I don't think you have to go that. I don't think you have to go that far to do that. But certainly you should do something with your rings and a watch too. Like a lot of times you have a watch, bracelets. If they go near food, they may have a little bit of crumb there. Again, these are chumras. But the question is, why is it a chumrah? Right? Why is that such a chumrah? So, I mean, it's a chumrah based on a lot of other chumras that we do. So therefore, you should certainly do something with it. What you do with it, that's up to you, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable, but something should be done with that. How about cell phones, right? People keep their cell phones on the table all the time, right? Especially if the cell phone has a case. There's almost certainly chametz within the cases, in the nooks and the crannies of your cell phones. Now, how come we've had home phones for all the years and nobody ever said anything about home phones? I think the difference is that home phones usually hung on the wall or didn't just sit with you wherever you went on the table, et cetera, et cetera. So therefore, I believe you do have to, the minimum, wipe down your cell phone and maybe even get rid of the case on the outside or check it well so that there's no little pieces of chametz stuck inside your phone or anything like that. Now, shoes do not have to be checked because the bottom, like we said, chametz on the floor tastes terrible, so nobody's eating anything off. Nothing's going to be edible on the bottom of shoes, so you don't have to worry about your shoes. Spraying up the garbage can with a cleaner, that's enough. You don't have to scrub it down. Certainly, you don't have to scrub it down. You're just washing it down with water is enough. Or spraying it up with a cleaner, certainly enough. Eyeglasses. I think it's less of a chance of eyeglasses being an issue, but if you think that there's dirt or whatever, so then wash the eyeglasses, right? Same thing with the toothbrushes, right? We're not talking the cosmetics tonight, but toothbrushes, that type of thing. Most people, I think, have the minute to get new toothbrushes, right? Because you never know if there's a little crumb of chametz stuck in the toothbrush. You would hope that it should be, then that means the toothbrush is doing the right job, right? So you'd hope that there's something there. And you don't want to be inadvertently swallowing that on Pesach. But push comes to shove, it's probably not edible, and with it sitting there and with the toothpaste, et cetera, et cetera. So again, these are chumras. But once we're keeping chumras, so these are chumras. I mean, if you're scraping your walls and you're scraping your floors, then things that you're actually putting into your mouth would make sense, right? Now, we're not doing kashering now, but the same thing with baby bottles and pacifiers, those type of things. If they normally get washed with chametz, then you should get new ones because we don't really kasher plastic, but we'll do that in Basician next week. But that's But that's another thing. Anything that goes near your mouth, you should be much more strict with than things that are just on the floor. Okay, so somebody just asked for braces or a retainer. It's a very interesting thing because we don't realize why it is that we have to be worried about this. So the answer is, and most folks can have an issue with this, and that the bottom line is you may sometimes put hot chametz into your mouth, and that makes your braces fleishiks, right? Now you're thinking, okay, so why are my teeth not fleishiks, right? Why if that's the case, and then why am I ever allowed to eat milchiks and fleishiks? Because my teeth, I eat hot cereal in the morning for breakfast, and then in the afternoon or in the evening, I want to eat hot fleishiks. So my teeth, why aren't my teeth treif? The answer is, this is what the place can say, that anything that's connected to something that's alive, to a beating heart, if something's connected naturally to a beating heart, then then it does not absorb taste. So since it doesn't absorb taste, therefore it's not going to become treif. In other words, anything for something to become treif or chametzik, it has to be able to absorb. Right? That's why some people say glass, Svardim, have no problem using glass for milchiks and fleishiks, dairy, right? Dairy and wheat, because they are the opinion that glass does not absorb, right? So teeth, natural teeth that are connected to the body don't absorb, but fillings are not connected to the body. That's not natural. And braces are not natural. So therefore, many places can say that you have to worry about it. I have false teeth, dentures. So, but push comes to shove, you can be lenient, but why not avoid the issue as much as you can? So it varies. The opinions vary. Some say if there's dentures that are removable, so you should try and kasha them, putting it into a hot cup of water or something like that. The best eitzah, and this year it's very easy because since Erev Pesach on Shabbos, most people are not eating hot chametz anyways for 24 hours before Pesach. But the easiest thing to do is anybody that has braces or dentures, or this really pertains to most people because most people do have fillings in their mouths, and fillings are not natural to the body. So the best thing to do is not to eat boiling hot chametz, which again, who eats boiling hot chametz? But meaning hot chametz more than 110 degrees, 112 degrees should not be put into the mouth within 24 hours of Pesach, which this year is very easy to do. And if you do that, then you're okay. Some places can say you should, if you know you have braces, you should take a cup of the hottest water that you would drink throughout the year. Let's say you have a coffee that's 120, 130 degrees, you put into your mouth, which me personally, I would never do that because it would burn my mouth because I'm not used to eating hot drinks. Everybody has to know their own tolerance level for heat. But some places can say, just take some hot water and drink it. And that will kasher, even if you go with the opinions that say that the braces are chametz, that will kasher it. But again, those are the two eights. You don't have to make yourself crazy. You just don't eat hot chametz for 24 hours before. Obviously, you should brush your teeth if you can. Well, this year it's going to be more difficult, but most people are not going to be eating chametz, or maybe a little bit of challah on Shabbos. So floss or whatever, take a dry toothbrush that doesn't make your gums bleed, or do all of the above, and that would be enough. A night mouthpiece for night, you could still have chametz in there, but in all, because that was left on the teeth, so that would just say wash it, and you wash it well, and then you're gonna be okay. Okay, if there's any questions, they should be asked now. Okay, so can you use egg matzah on Erev Pesach is a big debate. We'll discuss it, Bez Hashem, next week or the week after, but it's a big debate. I haven't decided what I'm going to do myself. I'm certainly not eating egg matzah. Ramosha Feinstein says you can eat egg matzah the whole Erev Pesach. But like we said, you don't want to sacrifice the covet of Shabbos for nerves. And if Shulchan Aruch says you could eat chametz by your table, so the best thing to do is just take a plastic tablecloth and put it out, make your kiddush, eat your challah, and then continue your meal. That would be the best way. That's the most covered Shabbos that you can possibly have. And that, again, that's not for everybody. It's not for everybody's nerves, but that would be the ultimate way to do it. But Bez Hashem, we'll discuss that. What was that one question that just flashed? No, 24 hours before the time to stop eating chametz. But again, I don't know what it's, I mean, it shouldn't be that difficult. Even you could eat chametz, just don't eat hot chametz. Like if you're gonna eat pizza Thursday morning at 10 o'clock in the morning, that's fine. Just let it cool off for a little bit and then you're gonna be okay. Okay, I wish everybody should be matzliach. If anybody wants to watch this again or know somebody that wants to, watch this, it'll be available on the website. I'll post it, but tystein.com. We're trying to avoid people going on to YouTube. That's the point of that. So tystein.com will have the share. I don't know exactly when it'll be posted. That's not up to me. That's up to the wonderful volunteers. Okay, everybody should be matzliach. Have a good night.